Gotta say, it was the last thing I expected to find, going through all the crap in my grandpa's attic after he passed. He was never much for sentiment, and even though I knew his father, my great-grandfather was a veteran of World War I, just like he was in World War II. Maybe he kept the journal out of some kind of soldier's honor, maybe a family obligation, maybe it was just forgotten, like he forgot all of us at the end. Probably would have been better had he tossed it. My great-grandfather, Will Johnson, decorated lieutenant, fought at the Battle of River Somme in Britain, France, my bad, among others. The journal was definitely a snapshot of the time. Honestly, it's kind of sad, seeing the thoughts of a bright-eyed young boy who thought he was going to defend his country and come back to a loving easy life and go to a shell of a man was harrowing. I'm honestly going to skip around the first few entries because it's sad to see. The worst thing is, he was becoming that empty shell long before the terrors started happening. Sometimes, the horrors of war are just as bad as what we don't know. Anyway, I'll transcribe what I can. I'm going to do everyone the favor of making it a little easier to read though. He was definitely classically educated, and his vocabulary proved it. Even in the middle of a damn trench, the man was eloquent. Oh, I'm also skipping around the love letters entries he wrote to his wife, my great-grandmother. It just feels kind of wrong to share those, especially because I already felt awkward reading them. Alright, I'm going to get into it. Just a warning up front, the things he saw were pretty graphic, so just be prepared. The movies don't capture half of what he saw in the field. July 12, 1916. Today marks 1 week at Somme. The river still stands between us and the Germans, but we're advancing quickly. My British brethren here are hardy, with the hopes that this battle will be done soon so they can take a well-earned leave. I pray it's soon. I've prayed to God as I go to sleep every few hours, taking my few free moments off watch or supply lines to shut my eyes whenever possible. Sleep came fitful at first, the sound of artillery shells falling around the trench keeping me on constant alert. We've lost a few good men in the past 2 days thanks to artillery. Paul, one of our British allies, was standing just feet away from me when he was taken out. An artillery shell came crashing down on him as he was setting up the razor wire atop the trench. One moment, he was there, stretching coils out across the dirt and mud. I didn't even blink in the time it took for his insides to be scattered on those same coils of wire, a small boom deafening me. When I looked back up to see if he was okay, I could see part of his face hanging from the razor wire, a dangling eye staring right at me. I swear it looked like he was still there, pleading for help. I couldn't even collect his tags. No idea where they ended up when there were parts of him scattered everywhere. I was clutching my rifle to my chest, struggling to breathe as I tasted the iron of his blood splattered across my face. Another soldier nearby must have seen too, because his 1,000-yard stare was worse than mine. I still had the faculty to do something at least. Sergeant told me to hit one of the bunks where I could actually sleep. He was unfazed by what I told him about the death, just a sigh and a confirmation that he would record it. Another in a long line. I'm going to sleep now, though I fear seeing Paul looking at me, begging with one eye for mercy every time I close my eyes. July 13, 1916. I saw something last night, though I don't believe it was natural. We've had issues, of course, with wild animals coming into the field, but those are small. Foxes, deer, and yesterday, a small bear. Though all the poor creatures would often end up triggering mines planted in the no man's land to stop charges. I remember the bear stepping on one with a hind paw, setting it off, and blowing off its back legs. It was roaring in pain, legs bloody shreds almost up to the hip. After bickering over whether it would be a waste of ammo, one soldier finally hoisted up a white flag, running across the battlefield. He was hopping over mines like skipping stones, until he finally got close enough. 2 shots from his pistol and the screaming from the animal stopped. He came back without incident, our enemies likely taking pity on the animal just as we had. Guess we have something in common, despite their evil. The body was left out there, nobody bothering to take it as we would our own dead. Maybe it was the rotting carcass that attracted the evil. I was sat near the battlement we had set up, a small line in the middle so that we could see out without fear of taking a bullet, though it didn't always work well. The moon was out, full as well, so the entirety of the trenches and no man's land were lit with barely a lantern needed. A rain shower came down earlier, soaking the battlefield. Reflections cast from puddles made the field look like it was dotted with glowing orbs. Maybe that's how it snuck in so easily, thanks to the glow of the moon reflecting. It was only the movement of it near the bear's carcass that gave it away. The bouncing of its ambient white eyes was obvious against the backdrop of still, uninterrupted water. It crawled from the river, stepping nimbly on long, nimble legs that were jointed in at least 4 points. It looked like a spider almost, the legs extending far before slanting down again toward the main body, a long slithering thing that almost touched the ground itself. While the legs were spider-like, it reminded me of the long centipedes we would see in our house during the summers, before the cat would gobble them up. The eyes grew more clear the closer it got, to where I could see that they weren't actually solid, more like a fog that was taking consistent shape, moving with the creature. It was larger than the bear carcass it was moving toward, with the eyes turning a deep crimson as it grew closer, still glowing against the moonlight. What terrified me most was that even growing closer to the bear, its back end was still in the flowing river. At least 200 meters, maybe more, still stalking towards the bear. It finally reached the carcass, immediately ducking its head into the belly of the bear, like it was inhaling the scent of carrion. I could smell the thing beginning to rot from here in the humidity, even differentiating it from the stench of our own dead and wounded. This thing was taking enjoyment in it though, relishing the feast. Don't think it took more than a minute. The damn thing reared its head, bare carcass in between 2 massive pincers. I could see a bristling opening just behind them, which it quickly used the pincers to push the bear into. With an assumed full belly, it slunk back down into the river, stepping around every mine as if it knew where they were. When it was finally back at the river, the twin moons disappeared, sinking back below the depths and blending with the full moon's reflection above. I know not how long I sat there, breathless, as if watching something I shouldn't have seen. Something still gnaws at the back of my mind, a feeling that whatever this was is taboo from long ago. Ancient, maybe older than the river itself, is what this thing felt like. I remembered seeing some old artifacts that were brought around in a traveling museum, and watching this gave me that same primeval awe that those did. I wasn't the only one to witness it either. Later, when getting my field rations for the day, Jones, one of the newer privates joining our regiment, asked me if I was on watch last night. When I said yes, he asked me if I saw it. I suppose he thought I knew what he meant, but I confirmed anyway to be safe, keeping myself subtle so as to not arouse suspicion. I've seen others get locked away for lunacy, the trenches getting to them a little too much, and was afraid it was happening to me now. I asked him if he meant the bear carcass, and he replied about the thing that ate it. Our stories corroborated, lining up with the same descriptions, or in the same ballpark at least. Though we still had no idea what it was, he believed it was a curse for all the blood spilled here. I don't know if I believe that, but I do know I'll be praying more earnestly before closing my eyes to sleep again. Hey, back to the present here. My head is killing me from trying to read his writing. The cursive he used was already super thin, but the pages had been water damaged at some point, so some words have me improvising with my best guess. I'll do some more transcription tomorrow, once I've had a chance to rest my eyes. Okay, Got a few more pages transcribed to upload. I'm going to go ahead and apologize for my fuck up in the last post. He was fighting on the Somme River, which is in France, not Britain. That was on me. I was tired. Anyway, the next few pages I've gotten here are a little more ambiguous in parts. I'm going with what I have, and I'll leave some notes where I wasn't able to transcribe what was written. I know this sounds like a letdown, but this thing is in rough shape. It was stored in a little box in Graham's attic, in the deep southeast, where it's humid as Satan's ballsack in the YMCA pool room. Some of the pages have damage from the ink bleeding. Others are literally covered in what I have to assume is blood. It's aged to a rusty brown color now, but the way it's spattered on the pages, there's not much mistaking it. I will say, the more I've read this and gotten to know my great-grandfather, the more I've understood what they mean by war is hell. Saving Private Ryan doesn't have shit on what he saw in here. The depths of hell aren't enough for what some men have subjected others to. July 14, 1916. I still know nothing of what the creature from the Somme was. Whether it may have been an apparition of evil or a primal force of nature, I can't say. I still see the glowing moons in my mind. Every time I close my eyes, they haunt me, mandibles expanding to devour me. Strange as it sounds, I fear that I can feel the creature watching me, no matter what time of day. The feeling of dread doesn't leave my chest, a millstone weighing me to the bottom of this mud-ridden trench. My chest hurts. We suffered many losses this morning when an attack took us by surprise. A gas attack. Though we didn't realize these barbaric weapons had made it to this part of the line. An artillery shell landed a few meters down the trench from my lookout, hitting an unfortunate private hard enough to break his neck when it caught his helmet. For a moment, everyone thought the shell just failed to explode. I'm just thankful I was far enough away that I wasn't caught in the real danger. It was only a moment before some of the soldiers closer to the shell began to cough, clutching their chests in pain. It began to spread even further through the trench, a faint smell undercutting the gunpowder scent that had become so commonplace. It reminded me of grinding pepper for a meal, coarse and making me feel like I was going to sneeze. The pain hit me immediately, like I had swallowed an entire pincushion in one gulp. I could remember getting tangled in some swamp vines back home as a child, hunting with my father. The feeling of their thorns tearing at my skin now felt like it was being internalized. My mind worked quickly, praise be, as I was able to get my gas mask on relatively quickly. Unfortunately, I had already been hit with enough to be in pain, so the mask only prevented further injury. In the meantime, I ran, pulling a soldier nearby with me as I coughed and hacked, trying to get them out of range. Maybe 20 meters was all I made it before collapsing. I vomited in my mask from coughing so hard, blood mixing with mucus. My breathing is still ragged, but stable now. The poor man I tried carrying out wasn't as lucky, with blood coming out ever thicker as he tried to cough the gas out. Every cough led him to gasp in for more air, desperately hoping this would be the one of fresh oxygen. But the gas was insidious, spreading through the trench. He died gasping in a puddle on the ground. Explosions began to go off in no man's land, loud and rapid. I lifted my head up to see if it was a bombing or an attempted charge while we were gassed. But what it really was filled me with more dread. Our own men, the ones who were too late to put on their masks, had sought freedom from the gas in their oxygen-deprived terror. They climbed from the trench, venturing out into the no man's land before anyone could stop them. Many fell immediately, twitching on the ground as their lungs gave their last dying gasps. Others activated the mines without realizing it, bringing them a sweet release of death if they were fortunate. For others, it only increased their suffering, blowing off arms or legs. One fortunate soul fell face first onto one, dying immediately. More mercy than the others could beg for. Artillery shell fell not long after, likely already aimed by the enemy in the event this happened. All we could do was watch our brothers die, choking in the mud. I pray for their souls to find the embrace of heaven. July 15, 1916. Jessica, I miss you. I hope you're well back home. I pray that the horrors I've seen are kept at bay here, far away from your innocence. The things I've seen here have left me changed, unsure of what may be real or not. My chest is pained even more, though I'm now feeling the effects on my skin and eyes even more so. It feels as though my eyes have been held open for hours against my will, dry and stinging with every movement. Even worse, my skin was blistered, red, and peeling even where my fatigues were covering me. The pain felt like an awful sunburn, though every time anything brushed me, it felt as though someone was scraping broken glass across my body. Seeing some of the other men, I'm lucky. A soldier was brought by me, skin sloughing off in sheets from the chemical burns, screaming like a million demons were trying to escape his lungs. Despite my injuries, I had to be on guard duty last night. The other man who was supposed to be on shift was currently scattered across the no man's land after the morning's attack. The night was bright once again, and from my cover, I could see much of no man's land, though clouds would occasionally bring darkness again. Only a little before midnight, I was scanning the perimeter, keeping an eye to make sure no enemy troops snuck up on us. The wind tore through the trench, giving me a chill that only hurt the burns more. I was shivering when I noticed the movement, perhaps 20 meters away, and strained my eyes to see through the dark. As the moon finally broke over, the perpetrator was illuminated. A soldier was staring at me, eyes twinkling in the moonlight, almost glaring right into mine. I caught my breath, straining to get up and take aim at him. It only took me a moment to look through my scope to see that this soldier posed no danger. The bright, vacant eyes never blinked, staring into the abyssal darkness toward me. I could see that the lower jaw was missing, one of the many victims of the minefield. As fast as it appeared, another gust of strong wind came, turning it over face first into the ground. Can't say I wasn't grateful for the breeze. I wish that was the end of the horrors I saw last night. Those soldiers were still scattered about on the field, beginning to blend with the smell of death we were also accustomed to already. I was keeping a keen eye on the river some, making sure that the moon-eyed creature wasn't going to appear to feast on their corpses. Reflections of the moon glimmered and played off the water though, leaving any efforts to pick out the creature pointless, if it was even there. Eventually, sleep started to take me, but I shook myself awake by focusing on the river still. The rushing water was flowing, only rippling on the surface, but the strong current was undoubtedly carrying away anything caught under. Moonlight dancing off the currents was beautiful though, mesmerizing in the way every little ripple created a new pattern. Dozens of new moons on the surface, leading down the river. Clouds began to overtake the light again, the dark shadow quickly coasting over the field to cover us. When the shadow overtook the river, bringing darkness ever closer, I was hit with a sight that filled me with pure terror that I've never felt in my life. The moons in the water did not disappear with the cloud covers take over. Instead, they stayed teeming under the surface, swaying with the current through the length of the river. White, bulbous eyes were glowing faintly, with a few ascending from the water, moving those jointed spear-like legs nimbly over mine's. One came close enough to get the hit that terrified me only a while before. I saw the mandibles pierce through the skull, sticking it on before lifting it to the gaping mouth. The pale moons turned a deep red once more as the decaying blood was fed on, this time giving a cemetery of orbs across the ruined battlefield. I was mesmerized by them. The orbs went back to a soft glow, sliding back into the water with little sound or sign that it was ever there. Dozens of them, all slithering back into the dark, murky waters of the Somme. In this moment, I know not if it was the shock of what I had just seen or my injuries. I fear it was far more real than I would ever hope though. As the cloud cover slid away from the moon again, revealing a battlefield now picked clean of the corpses there just moments before. They spoke to me. I know not if I was the only one that was spoken to, but the words have haunted me since, leaving me no rest as they repeat in my mind. I don't know if they're still speaking to me, or if it's my imagination making me hear them, even over the shelling though, like a deep, primeval growl of something that shouldn't be heard. I can feel their whispers as I write these words. Bring me more. Looking through the journal again, it's like these couple of pages are written by a totally different person. The difference is day and night in the man who was writing these words and the man writing the rest of the journal. I'm going to include a warning here because if there is talk of a in these next few pages, I know that's a bit much for some people. July 16, 1916. The whispers haven't stopped. Nothing makes them cease, constantly muttering right into my ears their profane demands. It says to bring it more. Thousands of different voices, all clamoring to bring each of them more of the dead that already litter these fields. I pray for them to stop in the night, crying as I whisper pleas to God for salvation. The words barely escape my ragged lungs, still stinging from the chlorine gas days ago. Nothing makes it stop. I would gladly take the gas again if it only made the voices stop. I fear for what they want me to do. Sporadic artillery fire has been hitting closer today. Many of the others hit by the gas have already perished. I'm one of the few survivors, and even now it still feels that my skin is burning off. Even trying to use the pain to distract from the voices isn't working, as they simply get louder when I start ignoring them. My belief right now is that others are hearing the whispers as well. Some of the other men around me have begun to act strange, more paranoid than is normal even for the trenches. Shell shock has set in among many of them, with most barely able to function. Many poor souls have been carted out and back to base, ceasing to function after they just seem to become overburdened by what they've seen. I don't base this off mere speculation though, as Jones, the soldier who saw the first evil alongside me that night, confirmed my suspicions. In the night, he began screaming from even further down the trench than I was. Yet his screams echoed through the night, piercing the sound of bombs falling from heaven. The unmistakable sounds of a mine followed, with one more almost immediately behind. And his screaming stopped. I didn't realize at the time that it was him, but the news of what happened reached me only a few hours later. Jones was muttering in his sleep about feeding the riverbed, assumedly the same thing we had seen when another soldier tried to rouse him to take his watch. Jones attacked. Before anyone could stop him, he had used his trench spade to behead the poor man. There were only seconds that passed when another soldier tried to get him off the dead one, the body still twitching, but Jones ran him through with the same spade. Nobody was willing to approach him then, but they said he glowed in his eyes, almost like they were glazed over in sleep. They thought maybe he was having a fit, not quite awake, and believing their allies were enemies, until he threw the severed head over the trench wall into no man's land before starting to drag the rest up to the surface. When another soldier held him at gunpoint to question, all he said was that he was hungry and pointed to the river. It's a wonder he wasn't shot right there. But instead, the story was that he got both of those dead bodies from the trench before hopping out himself. Once he was out, he kicked the head further into no man's land, stacked the bodies, and started dragging them toward the water. Made it maybe 30 meters before stepping on a mine, parts of him and the dead soldiers becoming unrecognizable from each other as they were scattered across the field. One of their pieces must have landed on another mine, making it explode as well. The darkness of night was accented by heavy rains only minutes later, stopping anyone from trying to retrieve them. Sheets of sleet made a veil between us and the river, limiting our vision to only meters across the battlefield. Some of the watch last night believed they saw faint fires through the rain, but were discarded. Their remains were gone by the morning, though rationalized as being taken by the swelling river, engorged by the rain. Right now, It is still raining as I sit in this hole, praying to whatever God might listen. I don't know that the Almighty Lord of the Bible is real anymore. If he was, this evil wouldn't be here. June 17, 1916. He needs to feed. He's hungry. I don't know why I'm the one being told to do it, but I fear it's going to make me. Sleep has escaped me. I've been up for at least the past 2 days. There's no end to the voices. Does it torture our enemies as it does us? Is there someone on the other side suffering these same evils? Or is this evil on their side? I know not what to believe anymore. All I have are these whispers. My prayers have failed. Editor's notes. The following entries have no dates. I'm very likely missing a lot of information here, as the pages are covered almost completely in writings. Some I can understand. Some are in what may very well be another language. Other pages are nonsense repeated. I've done what I can. It's rained for 3 days now. The river is invading no man's land, trying to reach our trench. I fear it's because they haven't eaten since Jones brought sacrifices. They will soon find us, turning the trench into a river of blood. Their whispers grow louder as the flood rises. Whispers have become more demanding though, more aggressive. They threaten me if I don't feed them. Waters grow near. The walls of the trench have been sloughing off as mud. There's no respite from the rain. Voices of many are now becoming more clear as one. It sounds out like a chorus still, deafening me while nobody else hears. It demands to be fed. Feed him, feed him, feed him, feed him. No God would allow such evil to exist. We are damned. It screams at me to feed it. Last night, I stole the corpse of a dead soldier. He was hit by a sniper bullet right in the eye. The force of the bullet was enough to knock his helmet off the back, splattering brains over those near him. I don't know this young man's name, but I knew he could stop the demanding threats. It only took a few moments for me to throw his corpse over the edge, out into the no man's land. The creeping floodwaters were much closer now, rain still pouring in sheets. I pushed the body a little further to the edge of where I knew the nearest mines were. I was still standing there when it dragged his body into the current, pale moons glowing through curtains of rain. Eyes lit up red as it drained whatever dried blood was still in the soldier, sliding back into the depths where more glowing moons were waiting. It still once more. Jessica, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I have damned us. Tonight, I will throw myself into the current. Perhaps it will end this horror. It once more. At least, I will have silence if it devours me. I will not be enough. Water is splashing over the barricades of sand and dirt, desperately lapping at the trench. I swear I can see the glow of their eyes in the night, prowling the perimeter to choose their preferred meal. His whispers are louder now. They are him. He is they. I fell asleep for the first time in days as water poured over me. These evils are only parts of the great terror below. It is greater than any nation can hope to fight, no matter our force. It demands to feed. I will feed it. I will feed it as many as it needs. It clouds my mind. I know that I cannot feed it. I cannot sacrifice my brothers in arms. If it doesn't feed now, it will take more. A river of blood haunts my every waking moment. We are using what we can to stay above the water spilling into the trench. Someone drowned in the bottom of the trench today. I found him. I believe I may have been the one to hold him under. His body disappeared under the waters and never came back up. He wants more. God is real. He is beneath us. I will feed him. I will ascend. I do not know who I am right now. I fear for these moments where I lose clarity. I do not know the man who wrote these pages. Someone is dead, and I am to blame. Others will suspect me soon. I fear that the trench is only growing higher, and it is my fault. Others are despondent. Nobody acknowledges we may face our death of nature instead of the enemy. I cannot be the one to hurt more. I will ensure I don't hurt anyone else. Jessica, I love you. I'm sorry. August 17, 1916. By the grace of God, I am alive, though I am changed forever. From what I have been told by the doctors, I will likely not walk again, not on both legs at least. My left leg is gone at the shin, while my right ends halfway up my thigh now. I will likely be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, but I am alive. I remember not of the last hours I spent in the trenches. My allies tell me that one night I finally wandered into the no man's land of my own accord, stepping through the river. I know not if I was following my own delusions or heeding the orders of evil, but I was far from the trench. A shell hit in front of me. I was blown back to the trench, my legs being taken by the blast. From there, I was carted back to a field hospital where I lay even still. Recovery is a long road, and the pain is immense. I have heard that the line has advanced since my absence, finally able to move past the river. Now, our only enemies are the ones we signed up to fight. I pray we are successful. They have just delivered me more morphine. I grow weary, but it numbs the pain well. I hope to be back home soon, Jessica. That's it. Nothing is mentioned again about whatever the hell he saw out there. The rest of the journal is basically a recovery process, learning to get around in a wheelchair and desperately hoping to get back home. Not sure who Jessica is, because my great-grandmother's name is Meredith. But I've heard a lot about her by now, guessing she didn't accept what he came back as. Gramps always told us he was an old bastard, too much of a drinking problem and abusive as hell after what he had been through. Then again, that's how Dad talks about Gramps too. Guess seeing the horrors of war does that to people. Maybe he just disregarded what he saw as just part of a hell on earth in the trenches. Maybe it was for his own sanity, unable to take the dissonance between what he saw and what he believed. He was a broken man. In the end,